You've been lied to about money. Not slowly, not accidentally, but deliberately. Because right now you're being trained to believe that $600 a month is nothing, that it barely covers groceries, that retirement on a fixed income is a fantasy unless you're sitting on $1 million. That lie collapses the second you look at the data. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, over 38% of U.S. counties now have housing markets where a full mortgage payment falls under $650 a month. But no one on TV will tell you that because panic keeps you obedient. Zillow, HUD, and census data all point to the same brutal truth. The average American doesn't have an income problem, they have a zip code problem. While coastal renters are bleeding $2,800 for 600-square-foot apartments, there are entire states where $600 buys ownership, land, utilities, healthcare access, and breathing room. This isn't theory, it's arithmetic. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly where Americans are moving right now, quietly, strategically, to live like millionaires on budgets the system told them were impossible. Watch closely. Because once you see the numbers, you can't unsee them. And staying put starts to look financially reckless. Number 7. Mississippi. Let's start somewhere most people scroll past without a second thought. Because Mississippi doesn't market itself. It doesn't beg retirees to come. And it doesn't plaster luxury buzzwords on billboards. But here's the uncomfortable truth nobody on cable news will say out loud. Mississippi quietly has one of the most distorted cost-to-lifestyle ratios in America. According to the latest 2024 regional price parity data, Mississippi sits around 86 on the cost of living index, meaning your dollar stretches roughly 14% further than the national average before you even factor in housing. Now let's talk housing, because that's where the illusion really shatters. The median home price statewide is hovering near $170,000, and outside of Jackson and the Gulf Coast hotspots, listings drop into the $120,000 to $145,000 range regularly. Run that through today's mortgage math, and suddenly $600 a month isn't rent, it's ownership, often on 3-bedroom brick homes with porches, garages, and land most Californians only see on Instagram Reels. But Mississippi's advantage isn't just cheap houses, it's the invisible cost people forget to calculate. Property taxes average 0.79%, among the lowest in the country. That means a $150,000 home costs you barely more than a fancy dinner per year in taxes. Utilities? Electricity averages 12.8 cents per kilowatt hour, and natural gas prices stay low because the infrastructure is already paid for. Groceries are where Mississippi quietly wins again. Food prices run about 15% below national averages, and while groceries are taxed, the lower baseline still leaves you spending less than retirees in Florida or Arizona. Healthcare surprises people too. Mississippi has aggressively expanded rural clinics and telehealth access, meaning smaller towns aren't medical deserts anymore. You're not paying concierge fees just to see a doctor. Here's the part no one warns you about. Wealthy people already figured this out. Retirees from Texas and Illinois are buying Mississippi farmland, not because it's glamorous, but because it's stable. Celebrities chase beach mansions that eat $30,000 a month in maintenance alone. You, on the other hand, get quiet roads, low-crime outside metro pockets, and enough leftover cash from that $600 budget to actually live. Mississippi isn't flashy, it's financially surgical. And if you understand math instead of marketing, you realize this state lets you live rich without pretending to be rich. Number 6. New Mexico. Now this one shocks people, because New Mexico gets lumped into desert stereotypes and crime headlines. But if you zoom out and actually look at the data instead of the fear porn, the picture changes fast. New Mexico's price parity index sits near 94, already giving you a built-in discount on daily life. But housing is where the real magic happens. Statewide median home prices hover around $205,000, yet in towns like Alamogordo, Clovis, or Gallup, you'll routinely see solid homes in the $140,000 to $165,000 range. That's not fixer-upper nonsense either. These are single-story homes with courtyards, solar exposure, and construction designed for heat efficiency. At today's rates, $600 a month gets you dangerously close to mortgage freedom. especially if you bring even modest equity from a higher-cost state. Utilities here are a sleeper advantage. Solar penetration is exploding, and many homes already have panels baked into the purchase price. Average electricity costs hover around 13 cents per kilowatt hour, but solar users slash that dramatically. Water is managed aggressively, meaning bills stay predictable. Property taxes? Around 0.80%, again sitting comfortably below national averages. Groceries cost slightly more than Mississippi, but still under coastal norms, and New Mexico offsets that with lower insurance costs and minimal vehicle expenses. No rust, no snow damage, no salt corrosion. Healthcare access is anchored by systems in Albuquerque and Santa Fe, while smaller communities rely on regional hubs that are far more efficient than overcrowded coastal hospitals. What most people don't realize is that New Mexico quietly attracts scientists, retirees, and remote professionals who want isolation without isolation costs. Los Alamos didn't happen by accident. Wealthy people value space, silence, and control, all things New Mexico offers without luxury taxes. Celebrities spend 5 figures a month for desert retreats in Palm Springs. You spend $600 and get sunsets that look like oil paintings, clean air, and a lifestyle where time slows down instead of your bank account bleeding out. New Mexico isn't cheap because it's broken. It's cheap because it refuses to sell itself to speculation. Number 5. Kentucky. Kentucky is the financial blind spot most Americans never bother to analyze, and that's exactly why it still works. While everyone piles into Tennessee and inflates it into oblivion, Kentucky sits next door quietly absorbing none of the hype and all of the benefit. The cost of living index hovers around 90, meaning your money stretches about 10% further than average, but housing is where Kentucky becomes dangerous to coastal narratives. Median home prices statewide are near $195,000, yet in towns like Paducah, Danville, or Somerset, you'll find 3-bedroom homes between $130,000 and $160,000 regularly. Translate that into payments and suddenly $600 a month doesn't rent you dignity, it buys it outright. Property taxes average 0.82%, keeping annual ownership costs laughably low. Utilities. Kentucky benefits from legacy energy infrastructure, keeping electricity prices around 12.5 cents per kilowatt hour, even with air conditioning in summer and heat in winter. Groceries are taxed, yes, but food prices themselves are lower than national averages, especially if you shop locally. Healthcare is one of Kentucky's most underrated advantages. The state ranks high in hospital density for its population size, meaning access without insane wait times. You're not paying premium access fees just to see a specialist. Here's what most people miss. Kentucky has quietly become a retiree logistics hub. Proximity to major interstates means you're never isolated. Yet land prices haven't been financialized by hedge funds the way Florida or Arizona have. Crime stays localized to a few urban pockets, while smaller towns remain statistically safer than many Sunbelt boom zones. Meanwhile, wealthy out-of-state buyers are purchasing horse country land not for Instagram clout, but because land here still holds intrinsic value instead of speculative vapor. Celebrities pay millions for gated privacy. Kentucky gives you space, silence, and solvency for $600 a month. And the biggest flex? You're living well without anyone noticing, which is exactly how real wealth prefers it. Number 4, Indiana. Now let me slow this down for a second because Indiana is one of those states that never makes flashy headlines, never trends on social media, and yet quietly humiliates high-cost America when you actually run the numbers. Indiana's cost of living index sits around 92, which already means your dollar goes noticeably further than the national average. But housing is where Indiana turns $600 into a financial weapon. The median home price in 2024 hovers near $210,000, and that's including Indianapolis. Step outside the metro bubble into towns like Muncie, Kokomo, Terre Haute, or Richmond, and suddenly you're staring at $140,000 to $165,000 homes that are move-in ready, not trailers. Not fixer-uppers, solid brick homes with basements, garages, and yards big enough to forget your neighbor exists. At today's rates, $600 a month puts you within striking distance of full ownership, especially if you bring equity from a high-rent state. Property taxes get a bad rap, but here's the nuance most people miss. Indiana caps property taxes by law, 1% for owner-occupied homes. That's not a suggestion. It's constitutional. Translation: your housing costs don't spiral out of control just because your zip code gets trendy. Utilities are another hidden advantage. Indiana's electricity averages around 14 cents per kilowatt hour, but natural gas costs stay low thanks to Midwestern infrastructure. Winters are manageable, summers are mild, and your utility bills don't ambush you. Groceries run below national averages, transportation costs are low, and insurance premiums don't carry coastal risk surcharges. Healthcare is where Indiana quietly dominates. The state has one of the highest hospital bed per capita ratios in the Midwest, anchored by major systems in Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, and Evansville. You're not driving 3 hours or waiting 6 months for routine care. Crime? Concentrated, predictable, avoidable. Smaller towns routinely post violent crime rates far below Sunbelt hotspots that retirees flock to blindly. Here's the punchline nobody likes to hear. Wealthy people already live like this, they just don't talk about it. Indiana offers privacy, infrastructure, and stability, the exact things rich people pay premiums for elsewhere. Celebrities spend millions chasing quiet luxury. Indiana hands it to you for $600 a month and doesn't even ask for attention in return. Number 3. Alabama. If you want a state where the math feels borderline offensive to coastal budgets, Alabama is it. Alabama's cost of living index sits around 89, which means your dollar stretches roughly 11% further than the national average before housing even enters the equation. Now here's where people choke on the numbers. The median home price statewide is roughly $190,000, but that figure is dragged upward by coastal and suburban pockets. Move inland, places like Gadsden, Decatur, Dothan, or Florence, and you'll regularly see $125,000 to $155,000 homes that look like something you'd expect to cost triple elsewhere. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, brick construction, land, and yes, $600 a month can absolutely cover a mortgage in large parts of this state. Property taxes are among the lowest in the nation, averaging 0.41%. Let that sink in. That's not a typo. You could own a $150,000 home and pay less in annual property tax than Californians pay in a single month. Utilities are another Alabama advantage. Electricity averages around 13 cents per kilowatt hour, and thanks to mild winters, heating costs stay tame. Summers are hot, no sugarcoating that, but AC doesn't financially punish you the way it does in desert states. Groceries cost less than national averages, fuel is cheap, and vehicle insurance stays reasonable. Healthcare surprises people here. Alabama has invested heavily in regional hospital networks, and cities like Birmingham and Huntsville host nationally ranked medical centers. You're not sacrificing care to save money. Crime is the usual objection, but once again, it's localized. Rural and mid-sized towns maintain crime rates far below the national average, especially compared to overhyped retirement hotspots in the Southwest. Here's what most people don't realize. Alabama has become a quiet migration target for engineers, defense contractors, and retirees with pensions. Why? Stability, land, infrastructure, and a political environment that doesn't constantly experiment with your wallet. Celebrities pay obscene money for Southern charm vacations. You live it full-time for $600 a month. Alabama doesn't sell dreams. It sells solvency, and it does it brutally well. Number 2, Pennsylvania. Now here's where things start making coastal narratives very uncomfortable, because Pennsylvania exposes a lie most Americans never question, that affordability only exists in the deep South or the middle of nowhere. Pennsylvania proves you can live cheaply with infrastructure, hospitals, rail lines, universities, and civilization still intact. The state's cost of living index sits around 94, but that average hides a brutal secret. Outside Philadelphia's inner orbit and a few inflated suburbs, housing collapses in price. The statewide median home price hovers near $245,000. But in cities like Altoona, Johnstown, Scranton, Erie, and dozens of former manufacturing hubs, You'll routinely find solid homes between $120,000 and $160,000. And not shacks. We're talking early 1900s brick colonials, Victorians, thick walls, hardwood floors, and basements that feel like bunkers. Run the numbers, and $600 a month absolutely covers a mortgage in these markets, often with room left over. Property taxes vary wildly, but here's the nuance most people miss. Many counties offer senior tax freezes, homestead exemptions, and assessment caps that dramatically reduce long-term costs. Utilities are a sleeper advantage. Electricity averages about 14 cents per kilowatt hour, natural gas is plentiful, and heating costs stay predictable due to legacy infrastructure. Groceries run slightly below national averages, and unlike Florida or Arizona, Pennsylvania doesn't gouge you with inflated insurance premiums. Healthcare is where Pennsylvania quietly dominates. The state has one of the highest concentrations of hospitals per capita in the country, anchored by world-class systems in Pittsburgh, Hershey, and Philadelphia. And those benefits spill outward. Even small cities have access to specialist retirees elsewhere wait months to see. Crime? Highly localized. Former industrial towns often look rough on paper but remain statistically safer than sprawling Sunbelt metros, where crime spreads horizontally. And here's the part wealthy people already understand. Pennsylvania has water security. While the Southwest fights over reservoirs, Pennsylvania retirees sit on freshwater abundance, stable rainfall, and zero wildfire risk. Celebrities pay millions to escape climate instability. You pay $600 and never worry about your faucet running dry. This isn't cheap living. This is future-proof living, disguised as affordability. Number 1, Ohio. And this is where the conversation stops being polite, because Ohio flat out humiliates the high-cost states when you put emotion aside and let the math speak. Ohio's cost of living index sits near 91, meaning your money stretches roughly 9% further than average, but housing is where Ohio becomes almost unfair. The median home price statewide is around $205,000, yet that number hides entire regions where prices feel frozen in time. Cities like Youngstown, Mansfield, Lima, Marion, and parts of Toledo routinely list homes between $95,000 and $140,000. That's not nostalgia pricing. That's real inventory. Brick homes, two-car garages, basements, yards. And yes, $600 a month doesn't rent in Ohio, it dominates. In many counties, that payment puts you on track to outright ownership faster than most Americans think possible anymore. Property taxes vary, but Ohio offsets them with one of the lowest overall tax burdens for retirees, especially when factoring in modest home values. Utilities are where Ohio quietly crushes competitors. Electricity averages around 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour, natural gas is abundant, and seasonal extremes are mild compared to deserts or hurricane zones. Groceries run below national averages, transportation costs are low, and insurance doesn't punish you for existing. Healthcare? Ohio is a heavyweight. Cleveland Clinic alone ranks among the top hospital systems in the world, and its reach extends statewide. Retirees here don't downgrade care, they upgrade it. Crime follows the same pattern we've seen again and again. Concentrated, predictable, avoidable. Smaller cities and towns maintain crime rates far lower than Sunbelt boomtowns bloated by population surges. And here's the final truth wealthy people already know. Ohio is boring in the best possible way. No hype, no bubbles, no speculative madness. While celebrities burn $50,000 a month chasing exclusivity, Ohio hands you stability, space, and solvency for $600. That's not surviving retirement. That's winning it. This is what the American dream looks like when you strip away marketing and follow the numbers.